Hi there. My name is Cadence. I'm a musician, writer, and gardener, and, well, I guess we're going to be doing some gardening today. What you're watching is my point of view from doing one of my regular quote unquote farming runs, as I like to call them. Nothing too crazy, just a regular Saturday morning in 94-degree weather where I tend to my flowers and do
Mm-hmm.
some weekly maintenance. So, let me just go ahead and put on my boots and step outside, and we'll get started. Something also worth noting is I'm in Zone 8 Alpha. For starters, you may have noticed that the audio sounds a tad funky. That's because I had to equalize some of the areas to reduce both the sound of my neighbor mowing their lawn as well as the firing range that you're already hearing in the background by now. I made the decision not to add any music so you can listen to the, well, somewhat natural surroundings as well as my commentary instead. I always start off by watering my flowers. Since today's a really hot day and I know the rest of the week is going to be the same exact way, I kept my hose out to do the water weight water method, where I water them twice to make sure it reaches down to the roots. Essentially, you do one round of watering throughout all of your allotments, you let the water sink down into the soil, wait a little while longer, and then water them again a second time. Normally, people wait about 5 minutes, but for me, I'm going to wait to water them at the very end of my farming run. I do have a watering can and a 100-gallon storage tank of water on standby, but I am having a little bit of trouble actually storing the water. But that'll be for another day. As I'm watering, I try my best not to spray directly at the soil, as to not disturb the plants underneath. I also try to avoid spraying directly at the flowers, as I often see many pollinators and other insects are constantly landing from flower to flower, so I don't want to prevent them from doing their job. It'd be pretty annoying if someone opened up the window to your house and then started spraying water in at you. I also take a quick mental note here that one of my solar lights has been busted. I'll try to make sure to repair that later. All of my allotments have a very wide range of pollinator-friendly flowers, as that was the entire purpose of this garden, for me to create a garden strictly for the pollinators. The butterflies, the bees, so on. The ones you can see blossoming on the surface were pre-potted, with dozens of seeds planted around them, so that when they die off, new flowers can go ahead and take their place. I currently have different varieties of marigold, salvia, daisy, coneflower, snake dragon, milkweed, butterfly weed, sunflower, butterfly bush, and roses planted around the entire garden. And around them, I directly sowed poppy, lavender, nasturtium, hollyhock, sweet pea, and more milkweed seeds that have been growing over time. If you look closely enough throughout the video, you have already spotted them coming in. And plenty of mosquitoes. I also have to be careful for some of the weeds surrounding my fence, as many are spiders and other things that definitely want to bite me kind of hide out in there. But I still keep them there for other insects to land on. Like I mentioned, I keep the hose out for later use. Every time I walk out into my garden, there's a great chance I'll encounter a butterfly or two. This time around, I spotted a red admiral butterfly taking a visit. I moved up slowly to try and capture on camera, but it had no time for me today. Maybe another time I'll see it. What I'm doing here is called deadheading. Over time, flower heads will die off, but will still remain and use up energy. Deadheading is the act of purposely pruning those dead flower heads and stems off to help preserve and transfer energy to bulbs that are still healthy. I make extra sure not to cut off any stems that still have ungrown bulbs on them, as they will eventually blossom more flowers. As you can see here from the up-close point of view, you can already see the soil is dried up from the heat. As I reach back towards my rose bushes, I notice much more of the weeds and vines are already starting to climb over this allotment patch. I start clipping some of them away and tossing the extra ones in the back. Out of all the flowers in my garden, the roses are the only ones I've actually had trouble with. I've tried multiple different watering methods, I've tried fertilizers, many different times I've done pruning, but they have been a bit in and out. It's not that the flower heads aren't growing or blossoming, it's just that they tend to die off really quickly, and their vines really seem to want to climb up the trellises that I put in place. I don't know if maybe that's a rose's personality thing or I'm possibly doing something wrong. In case some of you are curious, these are actually New Dawn roses, so if you have any suggestions, please be sure to leave them down in the comments because I'd love to hear them. After finishing up my one rose bush, I take my clippings and dump them over to my compost bucket. Don't worry, I'll talk much more about that later. Every now and then, just need to stop, relax, and smell the roses. Well, or just flowers in general, because my roses are obviously having some trouble. Did you spot those fake wasp nests I set up? Wasps are actually known to be territorial, so what we can actually do is set up those fake wasp nests, which are made of a mixture of wire and plastic, and it'll help deter them away from building nests. I have 3 of them in the backyard, and I've yet to install ones in the front yard, but I am planning on having a couple of them installed there as well. I'm extra careful in this corner of the garden, as I've also noticed a bunch of poison ivy climbing up on the fences and the weeds behind me. All these pre-potted marigolds that you see have only had about 1 or 2 flower heads on them when I got them from the store, and every single one of them has blossomed into this gorgeous bouquet of color. The marigolds are definitely the MVP for my garden. We're finally over to our compost bucket. Natural compost is usually made with a combination of water, air, green material, and brown material, as well as heat. As you can see here, after watering it, I try to crunch down all the material that I have mixed in there as small as possible so that all the other grubs and things that like to bite and break down all the material in there can get to it easier. I drilled holes in the side of the bin to help ventilate in some of that air that I mentioned before. Green material includes vegetation, other flower heads, and any other green veggies really. Brown material is obviously a mix of wood chips and other bits of wood as well, and cardboard. I continue this cycle of watering, breaking it down, repeat, over and over again about 3 or 4 times.
Hi there.
While of course saying hello to the neighbor's dog.
Bib fell.
I don't want to come outside to go
You're
enjoy
fine.
the fresh air, but because of the heat, she'll quickly make her way back inside. Every time I try to do Saturday gardening work, I try to add one new unique thing to garden. Today I decided to work on my bird feeder. You see, I had a post in the very center that held it, but anytime birds or squirrels would come by, they end up dropping off the seeds, and then those seeds will plant into the ground and grow some sort of weird weed, as you can see at the very bottom of my milkweed plants. So, I had to figure out a way to mount that seed feeder onto the side of my fence, as I do eventually decide. The thing is, I tend to overcomplicate certain things, so I took the less natural approach. You see, a more rational reason would be taking the 10 minutes to go to Home Depot for a wall mount, but instead I come up with, well, I'll just stop talking now and let you see what I end up doing. For the record, all 3 of these ideas sounded much better in my head.
Come on. With a shot. Yep. Good enough for government work. Sketchy as f- That's fine. I can hang a sign from here. Works out.
It may not look it, but I promise you it is stable. It's kind of leaning down in a cool kind of way at a 10-degree angle, but that's just fine. It fits the natural vibe. Me tending to my garden took about 2 hours this time around, which is pretty on average for when it comes to watering, pruning, taking care of the compost, and obviously doing extra random things. And don't worry, I did not forget about the solar light. Time for a bit of cleanup. And last but not least, there's one more plant to water. Having your own flower garden is daunting work. It actually took me about 5 months for me to actually get to this point as I started this process back in February of 2023. But for me, it's the little things like seeing pollinators and all sorts of butterflies and winged wildlife come through that kind of make the whole process worth it. And of course, being able to take your boots off and be barefoot on the grass below. And for the record, no, I did not notice Anna eating the grass behind me. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my point of view from doing a regular Saturday morning farming run. Please have a nice day.